It is really an honor for me to be here with you, and I would like to thank you for the possibility to participate at this beautiful project. Considering the topic of my paper, the title is Freedom of Conscience and Religion in the Family Law in the Slovak Republic. Well, to the introduction, as generally known in the history of Slovakia, churches and religious societies played one of the most significant roles, especially in the times of national revival, when several personalities asserting Slovak national rights were Catholic or evangelic priests. Aforesaid may be on the present demonstrated by the large number of people evolving to the religion or to the membership of one of the churches or religious societies. All these statistics prove that majority of the population of Slovakia consider churches and religious societies to be the integral part of social structure and perceive them, minimally formally, as important factor of identification of their own being. All the worse was to accept the grasping of the power by the representatives of socialist regime. They regarded them as ideological enemy, restricted their activities and social influence in every possible way, and put them under governmental and economic surveillance and international isolation. The current status of churches and religious societies in Slovakia is the proof that events of November of 1989 afforded them unprecedented possibilities, granting them the continuation of their traditional task of formation of the nation. Namely, the state fully accepts their social status and cooperates with them following the principles of partnership collaboration. Even in Slovakia, some religious elements has found its reflection in several branches of law, family law not omitting. To the history, as one of my colleagues mentioned, that it is really important to mention even some historical events because it is important for our branches, for our scientific branches. Just like in the rest of the Europe, also in the territory of contemporary Slovakia was family law for the whole centuries regulated by the rules of canon law, that is to say the law of the Catholic Church. Mention may be demonstrated, for example, by the sources compiled in 9th century by the Byzantine missionaries Constantine and Methodius. They were not only missionaries, but we may call them also as one of the first pioneers of law. Constantine's compilation, entitled Zákon súdny ľudem, that's to say, law for judging laymen, for example, included, alongside with the rules of property, criminal and procedural law, even the rules of family and marriage law. The important task of missionaries was namely in our country full of pagan customs, including practicing of polygamy to support the purity of matrimonial monogamy life. These social relations were practically in the same way regulated by Methodius' Nomocanon. They similarly contain rules of family and marriage law, not omitting the criminal rules sanctioning abortions. From these times, especially from the times of high Middle Ages, especially the Church of Catholic Church, the courts of the Catholic Church dominated, and the status was preserved even after the Protestant Reformation. This status was actual especially until the times of religious reforms of the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II, when by his legislation the marriage matters of Protestants finally ceased to be the subject to the authority of Catholics. This development was confirmed after 1868, when the Hungarian Parliament recognized the competence of Catholic Church only in the cases of Catholics. Another intervention in this era was in 1894 legalization, especially the obligatory civil marriages. Even the state registers were established, and judgments of the church tribunals in marriage cases was not then accepted by the state bodies. With reference to the first Czechoslovak Republic, the civil effects of church marriages were recognized again, though they were qualified as divorceable. In such a manner, the alternative form of contracting marriage was put into practice, but the change came after usurping of power by the representatives of the socialist regime in 1948, and their ideas were transplanted even to the family law. Although, in the Republic as a whole, until those times, the church form of contracting marriage evidently prevailed, the new law of 1949 put into practice obligatory civil marriages. Obligatory civil form of contracting marriage was then established in general that had to precede the possible marriage before the clergyman of recognized church or religious society. Assisting clergymen not respecting this regulation, even by negligence, had to be punished, especially with the imprisonment to 1 year. From those times, the marriage ceremony could take place only before the local national committee. Then another law from the same year removed from the churches and religious societies even the evidences of births, marriages and deaths, and transferred to the state bodies. Established trend was maintained also in the law of family of 1963. Although the original conception of this family law supposed the implementation of parental duty to raise their children in so-called scientific worldview, that is to say atheism, these endeavors were not successful thanks to the opposition of the religious representatives. The law, however, proclaimed that morality of the socialist society has to be the base of all relations in family, marriage, and while raising children. Interference of the state with family matters deepened even more in the times of normalization. After the fall of the communist regime or socialist regime, the sphere of family law was subsumed to the traditional area of res mixtae. This fact doesn't surprise at all, since already mentioned communist law on family accepted the family as fundamental cell of society, whereby this diction was kept also in the valid law. After the fall of this regime, in the territory of Czechoslovakia, also alternativeness of form of contracting marriage was put into practice, when to the marriages contracted before the clergymen of registered churches or religious societies were admitted civil effects. Church and secular form of contracting marriage were thereby equalized. From the time it was necessary to contract after the civil ceremony marriage before the clergyman of church or religious society. According to this law, marriage was contracted by the consonant proclamation of man and woman before the competent state body or registered church or religious society. This statute was conferred even by still valid law of 2005 on family, according to which state distinctively and broadly protects marriage as a unique bond between man and woman and helps its good. Even the source constitutes that marriage is contracted by the consonant proclamation of man and woman before the state body, namely before the register office established for the district or residence of one of the persons entering the marriage, so-called civil marriage, or before the body of registered church or religious society, then so-called church marriage. The proclamation on contracting marriage then make the willing to enter the marriage before the person performing the duties of clergyman of registered church or religious society. Just small remark, I suppose it would be more appropriate herein to use canonistic terminology of word nupturiens, therefore person contracting marriage, and even this term could be improved by the word nupturus, that is to say willing to enter the marriage, since its origin depends on the objective circumstances, independence of which marriage comes into existence or not. However, valid law on family, as well as law on register offices, uses the terms fiancé or fiancée or fiancés. even though this institution is not closely specified in the mentioned sources. And even from canon law point of view, it is necessary to point out that the betrothal itself has no impact on the origin of marriage and thus is not obligatory before entering the marriage. Well, back to the clergyman assisting while entering the marriage, while contracting marriage, his competence, from mentioned, moreover, we may say result that marriage doesn't come into being if such a proclamation would be made before non-registered church or religious society, or if it would be made before the person authorized to perform the duties of clergyman of registered church or religious society. Equality of status and effects of the marriage contracted before the body of registered church or religious society with civil form was later confirmed even by the basic treaty between Slovak Republic and HLC of 2001, as well as following agreement between Slovak Republic and registered churches and religious societies of 2002. Considering the termination of marriage, state law and order accepts divorce as a regular reason of dissolution of marriage under the authority of decision of state court. But for example, canon law decisions of competent authorities of Catholic Church do not dispose of secular law effects. This problematic is moreover regulated even by the mentioned basic treaty between the Slovak Republic and the HLC, according to which canon law decision on the nullity or dissolution of marriage is now notified by request of one of the parties to the Slovak Republic that will act in accordance with valid state law and order. Nevertheless, up to this day, any such rule regulating close these procedures was not passed. Regarding other or more of the registered churches or religious societies, they accept in the matrimonial area the competence of state, whereupon they refer in the matters of divorces to the law and order of Slovak Republic. Within the context of family law and topics relating to the freedom of conscience and religion, it is necessary to mention even the protection of life before birth, namely the topic of abortions. With reference to the overall secularization of society, also in Slovakia during 20th century, the prohibition of abortion was abrogated. In 1957, abortions were officially allowed, and the next development in this area was increasingly more and more benevolent. Nevertheless, only in 1986 was accepted by the lawgiver that endeavor of people to determine and regulate the number of their children is the inseparable part of modern civilization, and this conclusion was accepted even after the fall of the socialist regime. Since then, similarly as in the present times, sporadically appeared several words pointing out the permission of abortion is in the direct conflict with the Article 15, Section 1 of the Constitution of the Slovak Republic that guarantees the constitutional right to protection of life in the sense of recognition of its protection before the birth or already. Last well-known initiative led by the group of representatives of the party Christian Democratic Movement, in Slovak language Kresťanské demokratické hnutie, of 2001, when they objected the constitutionality of so-called abortion law with the argument of its immoderate benevolence when enabling the possibility of motiveless abortion. But these initiatives were rejected in 2007 by the Constitutional Court of the Slovak Republic. The court namely agreed with the findings of the European Court for the Human Rights and declared that despite of possibility of legal abortion by 12 weeks by request of woman is life sufficiently protected. Thus, mentioned law on the abortion is in accordance with the Constitution of the Slovak Republic. The same topic was recently opened in the National Council of the Slovak Republic in 2019 when several proposals of the representatives tended to tighten up the mentioned law, respectively to restrict it. These initiatives were unfortunately also not successful. To the conclusion, maybe, it is really evident that churches and religious societies traditionally perform in the society important tasks that, except for other areas, manifest also in the family law. Considering family, even the state lawgiver accepts the function of religion in strengthening it, the fact important especially with reference to its perception as fundamental cell of society. The same duties provide even the doctrine of majority of churches and religious societies, especially biblical principle on the indissolubility in marriage that leads to the establishment of a new family. Concerning the form of its contracting, in Europe retained the obligatory civil form only countries of Napoleonic Bismarck tradition, to which Slovakia doesn't belong at all. On an account, everyone may decide to contract marriage before the body of state or registered church or religious society, what may be denoted to be one of the most fundamental signs of full respecting of the freedom of conscience and religion in our country. References of state law to the regulation of individual churches and religious societies may be moreover perceived as the demonstration of respect to their right to administer their matters freely and independently. Ideal de lege ferenda opportunity to improve contemporary state religious law in this area in the Slovak Republic could consist maybe in full and automatic acceptance of the judgments on nullity of marriage of Catholic Church courts, respectively dissolvement or separation of marriage by the competent church authorities. It is after all evident that when believers apply to the church court, its decision is for them more important than decision of secular court. In case of nullity, we may moreover emphasize that if parties apply to the church court, it is apparent they are not interested to validate their marriage, using the convalidatio simplex or sanatio in radice. In my opinion, it is thus redundant to force the believers to undergo repeatedly the almost same procedure before the state court, what evokes the situation from the times of socialist regime when it was allowed to contract the church marriage only after the contracting marriage before the state body. Well, thank you very much for the attention.